Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Now, before we start, can you please let me know if the audio video is clear? Please let me know in the comments if I'm clearly audible and visible. And a very good morning. Welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin our discussion by looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 11 important articles for a detailed and comprehensive analysis so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Today's newspaper carries a number of important topics that are relevant both for prelims and mains. So let's cover them in complete detail and go beyond the article as well so that you don't have to read the newspaper again. Now, before we start, I have a very important announcement. Those who are looking to enroll for Unacademy's online classroom program, you have a great opportunity to avail a discount. You can avail a 12-month subscription at just 19,999 and you stand to get up to 12 months of free extension as well. So this will give you access to all the live and recorded lectures with all the study material and test series and doubt resolution and mentorship sessions as well. On the subscription page, you might see a different price, but to avail the discounted price, you have to enter the code IAS English. So this offer is supposed to end on 27th of August. And if you enroll during this period, you also get to be part of our mains residential program. Those students who will clear prelims will get free support for their mains preparation through a residential program where Unacademy will arrange the residential facility along with offline classes and mains test series to help you prepare for the mains examination. So those interested can click on the link provided in the video description below. And if you want the PDF of this analysis, please join the official Telegram channel of Unacademy IAS English by scanning the QR code on your screen. After the session ends, we will be sharing the PDF over here. So with this, let's get started and look at the first article. On page number 6, the Hindu carries an important editorial related to our legislatures, our parliament and state legislatures. The parliament and the state legislative assemblies, they play a pivotal role when it comes to lawmaking. They constitute one of the key organs of a democratic state. But however, these legislative bodies, they are constantly affected by dysfunction, meaning they don't function as per the scheduled time. Though the required sessions, which are constitutionally mandated, are held, the problem is these sessions are they're not effective enough to uphold the democratic ethos of our constitution. See, recently Home Minister Amit Shah was addressing the All India Speakers Conference. The speakers of all the state legislative assemblies were participating in this All India Speakers Conference, which was addressed by Union Home Minister Amit Shah. And the Home Minister urged the speakers, he urged the state legislatures to ensure that legislative bodies are more effective. He called upon the state legislative assemblies to ensure that the business of the house is carried on very smoothly. Now, this is where we need to examine why our legislatures, why don't they function appropriately? Why do we see constant commotion, constant chaos, a constant fight between the ruling party, the treasury benches, and the opposition? Because if you look at the data, it's quite alarming. According to PRS Legislative Research, which is a think tank that specializes in parliamentary research, the data is very alarming if you look at the effectiveness of each and every session. In the current 18th Lok Sabha, if you look at the number of sessions that have taken place, out of the scheduled time, hardly around 29% of the scheduled sessions were held. If you take the total scheduled time into account and check whether Lok Sabha performed as per the scheduled time, you will see that the Lok Sabha performed effectively only for 29% of the scheduled time. The Rajya Sabha, on the other hand, performed for around 34% of the scheduled time. Now, this is way below what is expected from our parliament. While Home Minister Amit Shah talks about state legislatures being ineffective, he fails to look at the parliament itself, which has been rendered ineffective. So, whom do we blame for this? The government or the opposition? See, today, there is a lot of animosity between the government and the opposition. The politics in general in our country has become very acrimonious between the ruling party and the opposition, with both sides blaming each other, criticizing each other, instead of contributing constructively to strengthening our democracy. Our political parties, irrespective of which party it is, they are busy in a mudslinging match against each other. But the editorial brings up a very important point. The responsibility of ensuring that the legislature functions effectively lies with the government. You can't blindly blame the opposition for disrupting the sessions when the ruling party is primarily responsible for the smooth conduct of the sessions, and the ruling party is also responsible to take the opposition on board and build consensus by working with them. See, the opposition is meant to hold the government accountable. The opposition is meant to criticize the government. But what we have seen is a very disturbing trend in some recent months, where legislations are being bulldozed through the parliament and through state legislatures by using the brute majority of the ruling party. On very, very important bills, debates are not taking place, adequate discussions are not being held. For example, in the latest parliamentary session, 15 bills have been passed. And what is shocking is that none of the bills were properly discussed and debated and thoroughly reviewed. Important bills like the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the 130th Constitution Amendment Bill. Many of these bills have been bulldozed through the parliament without adequate discussion, debate, and review. Even parliamentary committees, which were supposed to carefully examine pieces of legislation, have become a fighting ground between the ruling party and the opposition. The opposition wants to bring up critical issues. For example, the controversy relating to the Sir exercise in Bihar, or the allegations against the Election Commission, and questions that have been brought up against the integrity of elections in India. These key issues, which are significant as far as the Indian democracy is concerned, they have to be discussed by the opposition. The opposition wants to have a debate, but the government has not been allowing such debates to take place. So this leads to a very acrimonious relationship between the government and the opposition. Now take, for example, Operation Sindoor. Opposition was demanding for a discussion for a very long time, and the government did not concede for several weeks. It was only much later that the government allowed for a brief discussion to take place on Operation Sindoor. So even on these critical matters, we are witnessing a trend where the ruling class, the executive, is essentially not allowing enough space in the parliament for the opposition to play its role in the legislature. Even the opposition has to take the blame as well. The opposition has not been constructive enough. Criticism against the government can't be just for the sake of it. Criticism can't be designed to be chaotic and disrupt the proceedings of the session as well. Opposition has a pivotal role, and it is responsible for providing constructive feedback, constructively criticize the government and hold it accountable. So the primary responsibility lies with the government itself, and opposition also shares the blame over here. This dysfunction of legislatures is what causes concern for any citizen. So, what is the way forward? Now, before we talk about the way forward, let me give you some more insights and data regarding the dysfunction in our legislatures, because you can directly use the data in your mains answers to substantiate your argument. Now, for example, we have a parliamentary tool known as the question hour, through which the parliament and the legislatures can hold the government accountable by asking questions on important pressing matters. Earlier, the question hour was held as the first hour of the session, but now it has been pushed to a different time slot in the afternoon. But irrespective of that, the question hour has not been taking place effectively. The government on one side is not allowing enough space for the opposition to ask questions, and even the opposition is not making full utilization of the question hour. Instead, we are just seeing chaos and complete disruption of the proceedings in the parliament. According to PRS legislative research, just around 5 to 8% of the starred questions have been answered in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Now, this is very, very alarming. See, in the question hour, there are different types of questions which can be asked by the MPs in the parliament or the legislature. We have something known as a starred question, where some advance notice is given to the concerned minister of the government, and MPs can raise important questions, and the minister provides an answer or oral answer on the floor of the house. They can raise unstarred questions as well, for which written replies are given by the concerned minister. Even ad hoc questions can be brought up. The short notice question can be brought up with very short notice given. But these parliamentary tools of accountability are not being effectively employed by the opposition. And the government is not allowing the space as well for the proper conduct of question hour proceedings. So these are alarming indicators for our democracy, for a parliamentary system. Important tools of accountability are being subverted. And that is why the editorial raises this important question. But this is often seen when there is a centralization of authority by the government. Experts agree that parliamentary business and legislative conduct gets affected and disrupted when there is a centralizing tendency with the government of the day. Now, if you look at state governments and state legislatures, their performance is even worse than the parliament. According to PRS legislative research, on an average, state legislatures have been holding sessions for just around 20 days in a year. This is the average data. States like Kerala have a slightly better number, holding around 42 sitting days of session when it comes to the Kerala State Legislative Assembly. But states like UP, Madhya Pradesh, which are large states, they are a matter of serious concern because the average number of sitting days in UP, Madhya Pradesh is around 20 or sometimes below 20. So the disruption and the failure of legislative business at the state level is even more alarming. So this is often seen when authority is more concentrated and centralized, be it in the hands of the prime minister, the chief minister, or the ruling party in general. When you see a centralizing tendency, that is when parliamentary business is often disrupted. So that is a lesson that you take away from this editorial. Now let's take up a practice question based on this, and let's see how you can answer this question. Ensure that it's a balanced answer, because you can't end up blindly blaming the government or just blaming the opposition, right? The question says dysfunction of legislatures is due to concentration of power in the executive. Do you agree? Analyze. It's clearly asking for your opinion. Do you agree that disruption of parliamentary proceeding and legislative business is because of concentration of power in the executive? Now, if you say 100% yes, that I agree with this, then it might be slightly problematic, meaning you're blaming the government entirely, which means you're agreeing that there is a centralizing authoritarian tendency with the government of the day. So please don't do that. Your answer has to be more balanced and more nuanced. You can start out the answer with an introduction on the role and importance of the parliament and the legislatures. So this can be a good introduction. Why the legislative assemblies and parliament, why they play a critical role in a parliamentary democracy. So illustrate that in the introduction. Then in the introduction itself, express concern about the frequent disruptions and the dysfunction of our legislatures. Just provide that opinion in the introduction. After you highlight the role and significance of parliament and legislatures, point out that there is a concern. Later we'll elaborate on this. We'll provide enough data to back our argument. but point out that there is a concern with regard to the functioning of our legislatures, then in the body, present the data that I was discussing with you. The efficiency with which the parliament and legislatures have been conducted, or the lack of efficiency, the way in which starred questions are not being answered, question R is not being effectively utilized, how bills are being passed without debates, without for proper reviews. Even parliamentary committee proceedings have been disrupted. So bring out this dysfunction by backing it with sufficient data and point out that the government of the day has the primary responsibility to ensure the smooth conduct of legislative business. You have to point out that it is the government, the ruling party, which has the primary responsibility. It has to be more inclusive, more accommodative. It should allow for opposition voices to flourish in the parliament and the legislature so that they can hold the executive accountable. So bring out this argument, but balance it out by saying that the opposition is also not very constructive in recent times. I mean, there was a time several years ago where there used to be some sort of political bonhomie between the ruling party and the opposition, where the government would accommodate opposition voices. It would give space for dissent and criticism. That was a healthy period of Indian democracy, especially on important national issues. All the political parties would come together, irrespective of their political differences. But today, you don't see that happening. It's very rare to see all the parties coming together on an important national issue. So point out that even the opposition shares a part of the blame for causing the disruption and creating the chaos by not being constructive. But primary responsibility does lie with the government. Government can't blame it just entirely on the opposition. Now take, for example, the post of the deputy speaker. The post of the deputy speaker, by convention, as a matter of convention, goes to the opposition. This is the established convention in our parliamentary democracy. But the post of deputy speaker remains vacant for several months, sometimes during the entire term of the government. We have seen this in several states. We have seen this at the center as well. The post of the deputy speaker is not filled because the post of the speaker often goes to the ruling party, whereas the post of the deputy speaker, which should as a matter of convention go to the opposition, is left vacant. And this responsibility lies with the government of the day. The government of the day should ensure that it includes the opposition, and it should offer the deputy speaker's post to the opposition to build some consensus between political parties. See, when it comes to elections, political parties might fight. They might fight for votes. But inside the parliament, inside the legislatures, there has to be some coordination between them. This will happen only when deputy speaker's post goes to the opposition. And it helps the opposition to work more fruitfully with the ruling party that is at the power. So this is missing. And who's responsible for this? The government of the day. So bring out this balance assessment in the body and conclude your answer. Provide a conclusion where you point out that such dysfunction will erode democracy, it will derail the legislative business of the parliament and the legislatures, and there is a need to arrest this declining trend. So that can be your conclusion or your way forward. So based on what we have discussed, the structure that I have provided for you, please write an answer and practice your answer writing. This is the most important part of your preparation. If you really want to crack this exam, practicing answer writing is very important. That's why in every session of the Hindu analysis, we pay a lot of attention to help you write mains answers. For example, if you have seen the recent mains question papers, you would have noticed that most questions were directly asked from current affairs. So just by being regular with news analysis and using these editorials and columns and practicing answer writing, you will be able to do well in the mains exam. So I hope our discussions are helping you. I hope the answer writing that we are discussing in every Hindu analysis is of some help. So do let us know in the comments if you feel that we should continue with the answer writing approach. Now let's look at another important editorial from international relations. This editorial is focused on the developing nexus between China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. India is facing a new regional threat, a strategic threat, because of a growing nexus between China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So let's examine this in slight detail. You're already aware of China-Pakistan nexus, I'm sure. Since 1960s, China-Pakistan have been colluding together. China has not only given complete diplomatic support to Pakistan, instead, it has even used Pakistan as a proxy to target India. China has helped in the military modernization of Pakistan. China was the one which enabled Pakistan's nuclear program as well. And China has even given complete cover for Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism against India. And during Operation Sindoor, China was providing battlefield support, passing on intelligence and providing direct support in the battlefield during the ongoing conflict. So this is something that has been established. This is something that we are already aware of. But a new dynamic over here is the entry of Bangladesh into this nexus. Pakistan in particular has been reaching out to Bangladesh, and a new relationship is blooming between them. And can you guess who's grooming this relationship? It is China. China has been trying to bring Pakistan and Bangladesh closer because there is a turbulent history between Pakistan and Bangladesh. There has been a history of hatred, animosity, and a certain distance has always been present between these two neighbors of India, which we are going to discuss today. But now China is trying to bridge that gap. It's trying to bring both countries together. And this emerging nexus represents a strategic threat for India. See, the animosity between Pakistan and Bangladesh is historic. It goes all the way back to the 1971 liberation of Bangladesh war, when Pakistani armed forces committed a brutal genocide targeting the Bengalis in East Pakistan. As you all know, India played a pivotal role during this crisis by directly backing the Bengali liberation movement. And India played a direct role in supporting the creation of Bangladesh. India fought a war against Pakistan to liberate Bangladesh. So in Bangladesh, whenever the nationalists have been in power, parties such as Awami League, which fought for the country's independence from the front against the atrocities of Pakistan, they have always been pro-India, aligned with India. The then leader of Awami League, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the Bangabandhu, the founding father of Bangladesh, was always grateful for the enormous support that India extended to Bangladesh during its liberation war against Pakistan. India not only provided diplomatic support, we fought a direct war with Pakistan and even waged a covert war and backed the Mukti Bahini and Shanti Bahini movements that were led by the Bengali nationalists under the leadership of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So post-independence, when Bangladesh was under the Awami League, when leaders like Sheikh Mujibur Rahman were in power, India enjoyed fantastic relations with our eastern neighbor. But there have been periods in 1980s, 1990s, when Bangladesh came under the rule of the military, or it came under the rule of right-wing Islamist political parties, such as the BNP, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which has been known to be pro-Pakistan in its ideological leaning. Even when Bangladesh was under military rule, as a military dictatorship, it was seen to be pro-Pakistan back then. We also have few radical groups, such as the Jamaat-e-Islami, which has always been pro-Pakistan, and reportedly it is funded by Pakistani intelligence agency ISI. It is known for its anti-India activities. So back in 1970s and 80s and 90s, the then military regime at one point and few Islamist parties like BNP, which were pro-Pakistan, and even radical forces like Jamaat, sponsored by Pakistan, they've always been known for their anti-India position. So when these governments were in power, especially from 1975 to 2009, almost for these 30 odd years, it was anti-India forces who were in power in Bangladesh, except for a period from 1996 to 2001, when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's daughter, Sheikh Hasina, managed to bring back the Awami League to power. So during this period, we had seen a slight improvement in the relationship, as Awami League has always been grateful towards India, and Sheikh Hasina has always been personally grateful, as India played a direct role in protecting the family of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. But unfortunately, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the entire family were slaughtered, assassinated by elements within Bangladeshi military in 1975, who were backed by the Pakistani elements, those who were still aligned with Pakistani interests. So India managed to protect his daughter and another sister as well. So Sheikh Hasina managed to survive the assassination attempt, and she largely grew up under India's protection. So when she came to power in 96 and formed the Awami League government again, we saw a slight turn of relations between India and Bangladesh. But the real transformation started from 2009 to 2024. This can be called as the golden period in India's relations with Bangladesh. Because Sheikh Hasina managed to win successive back-to-back elections. She managed to keep Awami League in power, a pro-India party, which would stand with Indian interests and protect India's concerns, be it our concerns with regard to Northeast insurgency, because Bangladesh had become a safe haven, a fertile ground for Northeast rebel groups who were sheltered by the hostile elements in Bangladesh at the behest of Pakistan's intelligence agency. Be it the border security threats and challenges, including the threat of illegal migration that India has dealt with. All these threats were very severe challenges for India when anti-India governments were present. But once Sheikh Hasina came to power in 2009, most of these threats were effectively tackled. The Northeast insurgent groups sheltered in Bangladesh, they were almost decimated by Sheikh Hasina's government. And this helped in bringing down Northeast insurgencies led by groups such as ULFA, NSCN-IM, NDFB, and other insurgent groups. Border security improved, organized crime was tackled, illegal migration also went down drastically as Bangladesh started growing as an economy as well under Sheikh Hasina. But last year, following the growing unpopularity of Sheikh Hasina's regime, she was toppled from power, and now we have seen the rise of anti-India elements and forces under the interim government, which is headed by Muhammad Yunus. So India has had a very problematic relationship over the last 1 year. We have just completed 1 year of Sheikh Hasina's removal from power. And since then, we have seen a growing trend of anti-India activities in Bangladesh. And that is what deeply concerns India. So one issue which has always kept Pakistan Bangladesh apart has been the trauma of 1971 war. Because see, when Sheikh Hasina was in power, when Awami League was in power, a lot of serious attempts were made to punish the war criminals. Those Pakistani officers, soldiers who were responsible for the brutal, deadly genocide that they had carried out against the Bengalis. Bangladesh had even set up tribunals to try these war criminals and to deliver strict punishment to them, including the death penalty. Under Sheikh Hasina, some of the conspirators in this genocide were even held guilty by the tribunal. They were even hanged. They were even given the death punishment, which had ruptured the ties between Pakistan and Bangladesh. Because even today, Pakistan is not truly apologetic about what had happened during 1971. In fact, even now, Pakistan tries to avoid the blame for it. So until now, this had remained one of the major points of difference which had kept Bangladesh apart from Pakistan. As Bangladesh wanted an apology, Bangladesh wanted reparations to be paid, a financial compensation to be paid by Pakistan for the atrocities it carried out. But now the Muhammad Yunus government is slowly opening up to Pakistan as it has a pro-Pakistan, pro-China inclination. And it has been displaying an anti-India tilt. So what is worrying is that recently China organized a meeting in Kunming in the Yunnan province. The Yunnan province of China, it borders Myanmar. So it's very close to India and Bangladesh as well. So strategically, this meeting was held in Kunming, where China hosted the leadership of Pakistan and Bangladesh, trying to bridge their differences. Even under the Muhammad Yunus government, still the horrors of 1971 is still present. People of Bangladesh will never accept the atrocities Pakistan had carried out. But now China is playing a role here to erase those differences, and it's trying to bring them together. So recently, Pakistan's foreign minister, Ishaq Dar, met with his Bangladeshi counterpart. And instead of apologizing for 1971, he almost said that what has happened in the past should be forgotten. It should be kept aside and ignored, and they should focus on the current relationship. See, Bangladesh still expects some of the war criminals to be punished. There has been an expectation among sections of Bangladeshis that Pakistan should apologize and pay reparations, financial compensation should be paid. Then you might have heard of the Muhazirs, the Urdu speaking Muhazir community from West Pakistan who were settled in East Pakistan. So they remain in Bangladesh today. The question of their repatriation back to Pakistan is also a point of dispute. So today, Pakistan and Bangladesh are trying to address these historical issues which are present between them, and China is playing the role of the mediator between these two countries. And this is extremely concerning and alarming for India, because Bangladesh has already invited China to play a bigger role in Bay of Bengal and play a bigger role in Bangladesh as well. China has made significant investments through Belt and Road Initiative in Bangladesh, in Pakistan. China has been roping in Afghanistan as well under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Recently, the Muhammad Yunus government has invited China to develop the Lal Monirhat Air Base, which is very, very close to the borders with India and our Siliguri corridor, which is the chicken's neck of India. So the role of China is growing day by day, and the collusion between Pakistan and Bangladesh could create new problems, new challenges. We have seen how religious minorities have been targeted and persecuted in Bangladesh under the regime of Muhammad Yunus. And now, Pakistan and Bangladesh have taken the relationship one step further, and this is even more concerning. Because see, Pakistan has set up direct flights with Bangladesh, and visa-free access has been implemented for the movement of diplomats. Now, this is a very serious matter for India, because under the guise of diplomats, intelligence operatives, especially those from the ISI, could freely travel to Bangladesh, as visa-free arrangement has now been provided with direct flight facility. So this could facilitate the easy movement of ISI operatives from Pakistan to Bangladesh, and we might witness new problems, security challenges towards the eastern, northeastern parts of India. And Pakistan is not even hiding its intentions, especially after Operation Sindoor. Pakistani army leadership, they have been publicly speaking about meddling with India's eastern borders and northeastern borders. Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir has directly spoken about creating destabilization in India's northeast, which obviously will happen via Bangladeshi borders. So this growing collusion between them is a matter of very serious concern for India. Direct flights have been set up, visa-free access for their diplomats has been given. They've even set up a maritime trade route for the first time. A direct maritime trade route has been opened between Dhaka and Karachi from important ports like Chittagong and Mongla. Direct shipping route has been set up with Karachi, and this becomes another serious matter of concern. This could be easily misused to traffic and smuggle drugs and weapons, which could be pushed into the hands of terrorists and insurgents to create security challenges for India. So the involvement of China in all of this, the role of radical forces such as the Jamaat, is what is alarming for us, and that is why there is a need for India to focus on regional diplomacy. Because see, India has sidelined the regional group, which is SARC. Over the last one decade, especially since 2016, since the Uri attacks, we have been trying to isolate Pakistan in South Asia, and we have sidelined the regional group, which is SARC. If SARC was functional and effective, India would have had some leverage over Bangladesh, as Bangladesh was our most important trading partner in the neighborhood, and Bangladesh was heavily dependent on India for trade. But today, this trade is suffering as both sides have retaliated against each other, and India has shut down the land port access, and Bangladesh also has reciprocated. So as a result, the trade is suffering, and today we are losing that economic leverage over Bangladesh to keep Bangladesh away from Pakistan and hostile elements. And SARC being ineffective will create a perfect opportunity for Pakistan to fill that vacuum which has been left by India. Since India has become distant from the new government in Bangladesh, Pakistan is filling that vacuum, and China is the one pushing Pakistan to fill that vacuum. So, this is a warning that India should take very seriously. So, that is what is discussed in this editorial. So, I hope this topic is clear. Now, take up this practice question. The China Pakistan Bangladesh nexus is emerging as India's biggest regional threat. Elucidate. So, please try to write an answer and post your answers in the comment section. Now, coming to the next article on page 6, there is a column that focuses on the topic of sedition and how it is a threat to free speech and expression, how it is a threat to press freedom. So, I'll not take much of your time. I want to provide a very quick explanation to this topic. First, let's understand the context, why the topic of sedition is in news, why the topic of free speech and press freedom is in the news. By the way, this article is written by Madan B. Lokar, a former judge of the Supreme Court. So the author has sufficient expertise to talk about this matter, and he's expressing very serious concern about the deterioration of press freedom and free speech and expression in our country. The misuse of laws linked with sedition has become an alarming concern. Recently, a FIR was filed in Assam against noted journalists such as Karan Thapar and Siddharth Varadarajan, who's the editor-in-chief of a digital news portal known as The Wire. I'm sure all of you would be familiar with news anchor Karan Thapar, right? A very popular media individual, a celebrity. Siddharth Varadarajan as well, a very noted name, who heads a digital media outlet called The Wire. Now, both the journalists have often taken a critical view of the ruling dispensation. They are known to bring out a critical debate, bring out critical viewpoints, asking questions about the government, its efficiency, its failures. That is the job of the media. That's exactly what journalists are supposed to do. It's not the job of the journalists to praise leaders, ask which food they eat or which mangoes do they like. The job of journalists is to question the government, question those who are in power, criticize them. And that is essentially what will provide for accountability in a democracy. And that's why media is considered as the fourth pillar. Independent media is a fourth pillar in a democratic state. But a FIR has been filed against these two noted journalists in Assam. They have been summoned by the police for an interrogation. So imagine, just for reporting, journalists have essentially been dragged into a criminal case, a criminal conspiracy, and they have been charged under section 152 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So what does this section deal with? What was the previous iteration of this legal provision? That is what we will understand. Section 152 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, it deals with any criminal act designed to threaten the sovereignty, unity, integrity of the nation by resorting to an armed rebellion or by resorting to separatist activities. So if someone is trying to break up the country, if someone is trying to instigate terrorism, insurgency, directly threatening and trying to break up the unity of the nation and integrity of the nation, they can be charged under this provision, section 152 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. This is a revised version of section 124A of Indian Penal Code, which has been a very controversial provision in Indian law. Section 124A was even popularly referred to as the sedition law. So this erstwhile provision of the IPC dealt with any act designed to promote disaffection against the government. any act designed to promote hatred and contempt against the state, it was seen as a punishable offense with a punishment up to life imprisonment. Now, previously, Section 124A of IPC was blatantly misused. It was one of the most controversial pieces of legislation, which had led to the curbing of free speech and free expression to target opponents and dissidents and critics of the government. Now, the very provision of sedition, see, the term sedition itself is not used by these laws, but the very concept of a sedition law goes back to British era. It's important to understand the history as well here. The whole concept of sedition dates back to 17th century Britain, where it was viewed that the government, that is the monarchy, Her Majesty, should never be criticized. That the monarchy is beyond criticism. In Britain in 17th century in particular, the prevailing opinion was the state and the majesty should never be criticized. The royals should be completely protected from any sort of criticism, from any negative statements. There was this prevailing opinion that only positive things should be spoken about the British monarchy and the British state. You see a reflection of that even today. So this eventually was codified into a sedition law, and it was used blatantly in British India to target our freedom fighters. A sedition law was brought out, and the primary intent and purpose was to curb any criticism of British colonialism, to target our national movement, target our freedom fighters, curb their right to free speech and expression, curb free press. In fact, the first Indian to be punished under the sedition law was none other than Bal Gangadhar Tilak, the legendary freedom fighter. So from the likes of Bal Gangadhar Tilak to Mahatma Gandhi to Subhash Chandra Bose, they've all been tried and even jailed under the sedition laws of India. So post independence, when this provision was inherited, it was always seen as a very controversial provision. In 1950, the constitutionality of this law came into question because this was seen as violative of the right to free speech and expression and free press guaranteed as a fundamental right under Article 19. So in this case, the Roman Thapar case, and let me point out the irony here. Roman Thapar was the relative of current Thapar. In this Roman Thapar case of 1950, Supreme Court had declared this as unconstitutional at one point. And that is what led to the first constitutional amendment by the then Nehru government, carrying out an amendment, right, which brought out some changes with regard to free speech and expression and free press under Article 19. In 1962, in the Kedarnath case, the Supreme Court declared sedition as constitutional. The constitutionality was upheld by the court, but however, restrictions were placed on its usage. That is, only if an act was inciting hatred, violence, contempt, and disaffection, only then sedition law should have been invoked. But as you know, governments and police have blatantly misused this provision to target journalists, civil society activists, and opponents and critics and dissidents. So there has always been a controversy surrounding this provision. In fact, this is where we come across the doctrine of chilling effect. When you know that you might be jailed for what you say, what you speak, what you write, which is your basic fundamental right under Article 19, tomorrow you will become silent. Automatically, you will become silent because you have a fear of being targeted by the government tomorrow by misusing laws such as sedition law. You will see that activists, journalists are being summoned in jail, interrogated, and even arrested as well, just for exercising their fundamental right. So tomorrow, every journalist, every activist will go silent because that is the impact of chilling effect. So without actually targeting the activists and journalists, by setting an example with some of the individuals, government can ensure that a law can have a chilling effect. And judiciary has often interpreted this as well as the doctrine of chilling effect. Now, in this article, Justice Madan B. Lokur says that the new provision, Section 152 of the BNS, will have a doctrine of freezing effect. It will not only have a chilling effect, he says it will have a freezing effect if noted journalists like Siddharth Varadarajan and Karan Thapar are targeted, summoned by the police, and if they are facing a possible jail term just because of performing their duty, then this will have not the impact of chilling effect, but it is going to freeze free speech and free press forever. No journalist will talk freely or write freely because look at the inconvenience which will be caused. See, eventually they might get out of these cases because the cases are not strong enough. The FIR which has been filed, it's not a strong enough case against Karan Thapar and Siddharth Varadarajan. Because what does Section 152 of BNS say? It provides for life imprisonment and strict punishment when there is a threat to sovereignty, unity, integrity of the nation through armed rebellion and separatist activity. How can you blame a journalist of engaging in armed rebellion and separatist activity without proper proof and evidence? So most likely the case is likely to fall apart. But the problem here is that any Tom, Dick and Harry in the country who will take offense to criticism against the government, who are blind followers of the government, they might go file a FIR and imagine the inconvenience that will be caused to you. Now, for example, I'm an educator taking a session on YouTube. So it will be my duty to provide a balanced view of any controversial topic. Sometimes that would involve criticizing the government as well, criticizing the ruling party as well. So if, let's say, someone takes offense to it, someone assumes that my analysis is a threat to the nation's sovereignty and unity and integrity, you can go file a case under Section 152 of BNS. And I might get interrogated by the police. I might even get arrested as well. Don't get the wrong idea. Don't go file a case for this, but I'm trying to make a point here. So if this happens, imagine the inconvenience that I'll have to go through. I'll have to go visit the police station, suffer the process of interrogation, and incur the entire expense as well. And the case can be filed anywhere. I might be based out of Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore. Let's say case is filed in Northeast India. I will have to travel to that jurisdiction, to that police station, to the courts, and incur and bear all the expenses as well. The writer correctly points out that this is a gross miscarriage of justice. An accused is presumed to be innocent. Now, why should Karan Thapar or Siddharth Varadarajan go to Assam for the interrogation? Can't the police have a video conferencing? Can't they use technology to record the interrogation? And what is the guarantee that when they visit the police station, the interrogation will happen? What's the guarantee it will be over in 1 or 2 days? It will create a lot of uncertainty. It will disrupt their lives. They'll have to incur expenses. Now, you can say journalists like Karan Thapar, Siddharth Varadarajan can afford this. Correct, I agree with you. What if it's a common man? What if it's a poor journalist, a poor activist? Why should their lives be disrupted just because someone took offense, someone filed a case, and why should they be summoned by the police? Shouldn't it be the case where police should travel to interrogate the accused on state expenses? That is how it should actually work. But there is a clear lacuna in the legal provisions itself, which is being pointed out by former judge of the Supreme Court, Madan B. Lokur. In fact, in this particular case, Karan Thapar and Siddharth Varadarajan, they have not even been presented with the FIR copy. It took them several weeks to get hold of the FIR copy as to what is the allegation against them. See, Supreme Court has clearly established in the Youth Bar Association of India case 2016 that FIR copy has to be given to the accused. You should know what you're accused of. This has been reiterated by Karnataka High Court last year as well. That accused should get a copy of the FIR. You should know the charges against you. Or else how will you defend yourself? If you're being interrogated by the police, they should tell you on what grounds, on what charges are they interrogating you, which means they should give you a FIR copy. But in the case of Karan Thapar, Siddharth Varadarajan, for several weeks, Assam police did not even give them a FIR copy. So there is a possibility that provisions like Section 152 can be easily misused on political grounds to target those who are criticizing the government. And this will not only have a chilling effect on free speech and free press, it is going to have a freezing effect on free speech and free press. That's why the writer expresses a very serious concern about these provisions. Now, coming to the next article, Prime Minister Modi is all set to carry out a very important visit to Japan, followed by a visit to China from August 29th to September 1st. PM Modi will be traveling to two important Asian countries. First, he will visit Japan, sign critical agreements with Japan. Japan is a key partner for India. And he will be visiting China for the much awaited SCO summit. So it's a busy week in Indian diplomacy. So we will be covering these topics as well. So let me know if you want a detailed analysis of these upcoming visits. I will try to cover them separately. Now, the point is India Japan relations, why are they important? What will PM Modi try to achieve during this visit to Japan? Let's break it down quickly. See, Japan has always been a very reliable, trusted partner for India. Since 1950s, Japan has backed India's development through its ODA program, the Overseas Development Assistance Program, through which Japan has provided concessional loans to India for mega infrastructure and development projects. Be it our metro train projects in Delhi and Bengaluru, be it the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, or the upcoming high-speed rail, the bullet train project between Mumbai and Ahmedabad, or be it the dedicated freight corridor project, the Eastern and Western DFC projects. All these mega infrastructure projects of India, they are funded with Japanese concessional loans. Even development projects, especially in the Northeast, from Assam to Tripura to Arunachal Pradesh, several development initiatives are being funded by Japan through these concessional loans. So Japan has been a key backer of India's development, India's growth story, India's infrastructure development. We have a free trade agreement. There is a FTA, a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement that drives the trade relationship. And today we have become very close defense and strategic partners. Because we have common concerns, common threats. If you look at the Indo-Pacific, the common concern is the rising aggression and the expansionist policies of China. How China has been creating trouble in South China Sea and East China Sea. China has claimed the Japanese island of Senkaku Diaoyu in the East China Sea. As a result, there is a standing maritime dispute between China and Japan. China has been very, very aggressive, and it has even disrupted freedom of navigation. It has threatened Japanese aircraft and vessels and prevented their movement and overflight, which is in contravention to the UN Convention on Law of the Sea. China has blatantly broken the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. So both India and Japan believe that rules-based order should be upheld, international law should be upheld, and they want a free and open Indo-Pacific. The free and open Indo-Pacific doctrine that was laid down by former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which has become the main theme of the Quad grouping as well. Under the quadrilateral, India and Japan are working together with Australia, with United States, to ensure that rules-based order is upheld in the Indo-Pacific and to keep a check on China's violations. So India and Japan have a close defense partnership. We are part of many military exercises. We are looking to procure arms and weapons from Japan as well. We're looking to collaborate in the domain of defense technology development. Plus, we are starting partnerships in the field of artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and other critical emerging technologies. India and Japan are also working together to diversify global supply chains. They've even started the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative with Australia. India, Japan, and Australia, few years ago, have started a Supply Chain Resilience Initiative to reduce their dependency on China-controlled supply chains. So all these ties will be taken forward during PM Modi's visit. And it comes at a very critical time, at a time when the United States has become unreliable under the erratic policies of Donald Trump. Trump's policies have not only targeted India, it has brought Japan under pressure as well. You might have seen how Trump is trying to extract from everyone, including the closest allies of United States. See, let me tell you, South Korea, for example, has been a time-tested friend of United States, and US has military forces and troops in South Korea, and it has guaranteed to defend South Korea against any aggression from North Korea. But recently, did you know, Trump met with South Korean leader and he is demanding South Korea to provide territorial control over these military bases of the US in South Korea. Essentially, US is bullying South Korea. It has bullied Japan. It has bullied European Union. And now Trump's US is bullying India as well. So this could be driving a new change in Asian geopolitics. India will not only seek closer ties with Japan to offset Trump's policies, we might even try to seek a reset with China, which is very much on the cards. Yes, India China had their differences. For more than a decade, border tensions have remained high, especially after the Ladakh military clashes. But now we have achieved a reset. We have brought some normalcy back with regard to the boundary issue. And PM Modi is traveling to China directly from Japan to attend the SEO summit. PM Modi will be meeting with Xi Jinping, and we might see a reset of India China relations. And who knows, a possible India China Japan collaboration to offset and counter the unreliable policies of United States under Donald Trump. So this is also a likely possibility. So essentially, we are in very interesting times where geopolitics is churning, and we might even see the emergence of a new world order altogether. So that is why this upcoming visit is so important, and we will continue to track this particular development. Next, on page 7, there's another important article. Before legislation becomes litigation. This article talks about the role of the parliament and the judiciary when it comes to lawmaking. So let's understand the core point as quickly as possible. I'll take you beyond the article as well. Now, have you heard of the term parliamentary sovereignty, where the parliament is considered to be supreme? This is a concept that you see in Britain. In the United Kingdom, the parliament is supreme, it is sovereign. It is essentially beyond review, beyond question. But that is not the case with India. India's constitution makers were very clear that there won't be parliamentary sovereignty in India. In India, what is supreme is the constitution. Now, as per the role assigned by the constitution, the parliament, the legislature, its primary business is lawmaking, to draft laws, to discuss, debate them, and pass those laws and bring them into effect. That is the primary role of the parliament. Now, these laws, they have to be aligned with the constitutional principles, the constitutional goals, and the vision of our founding fathers. It should uphold the fundamental rights. The laws will have to be fair. It will have to be reasonable. Correct? But if the law violates these standards, meaning if it poses a threat to constitutional rights, fundamental rights, if it is not a fair law, if it is unreasonable, if it is treating different citizens differently, if such inconsistencies are there in the law, then such a law can be taken up for judicial review. The judiciary can review any such law passed by the legislature, by the parliament, which is ultra vires the constitution, which goes against constitutional rights, against the basic structure, and also if it is unfair and unreasonable, courts can strike down those legislations and amendments. Now, this is where a conflict comes up. Because see, in a democracy, there is a clear doctrine of separation of powers, where the jurisdiction of the three organs of a democratic state is clearly laid down. There is a jurisdiction for the executive, for the government, a jurisdiction for the parliament, the lawmaking organ, a jurisdiction for the judiciary. But quite often, the judiciary is accused of overstepping its jurisdiction, carrying out overreach into the domain of the parliament. You will see that every piece of law being passed, every amendment being carried out is litigated in front of the courts. And sometimes even before a legislation becomes a law, or even right after a law has been passed with the parliament, immediately it is taken up for a review by the judiciary, thereby leading to a sort of a jurisdictional clash between the judiciary and the parliament. The judiciary gets accused as well of overstepping its jurisdiction and playing the role of the lawmaker. The role of the judiciary is to interpret the law, to uphold fundamental rights. But today, the highest court, the Supreme Court, even high courts are playing a role where they are looking at the laws, whether they are constitutional, whether they are fair and reasonable, and even giving directives to the parliament, pushing for changes in the law. And this becomes a case of judicial overreach, resulting in this clash between parliament and judiciary. But you can't blame the judiciary for this. That's why the title, before legislation becomes litigation, meaning even before a law is passed, it goes to litigation in a court. Now, this undermines the role of the parliament itself. So, if you can't blame judiciary, who will you blame for this? The blame lies with the parliament itself. Be it the drafting of a law, the discussion and debate surrounding a law, and the process employed by the parliament while passing a law. If this is done properly, why would there be a need to litigate a law in the courts? If the parliament had done its job, meaning if the political parties, the MPs had done their job to carefully look at the law, discuss and debate, if the government had done its due diligence in drafting a fair, reasonable law and adopted the recognized parliamentary process, there would be no need for judiciary to step in unless and until it was really necessary. Judicial review should be like a last resort. But however, it has become the first resort today. In fact, MPs themselves will go file cases sometimes against upcoming laws and laws which have been passed. That's because there are serious flaws in how the laws are being drafted and made and passed today. So please understand the lawmaking process. When a new law is proposed, the concerned ministry will first bring out a draft after consulting all stakeholders. It might even set up a special committee sometimes to draft a law. So this proposed draft bill, it is taken up for consultation first within the government. Other concerned stakeholders, it could be other ministries, other organs of the government, even the civil society, they're all consulted when the draft law is being drafted. And finally, it is forwarded to the law ministry for a final legal opinion. Law ministry checks whether it meets all the constitutional requirements, whether it is fair, reasonable, whether it contradicts any other existing law, and finally grants an approval, and it is eventually taken up by the cabinet. Once approved, it's tabled in the parliament. In the parliament, it goes through multiple rounds of discussion, where initially government will lay the bill in the house, provide a first reading. Then in second and third reading, they should go into the details. If required, they should refer the bill to the parliamentary standing committees for a thorough review, for a clause by clause reading, where they read each and every clause, debate on every possibility. This is where the law making should happen. Any changes required, amendments required should happen. And finally, it comes out as a law that has been passed with the parliament. But there are serious discrepancies in the entire process. First of all, ministries are rushing to draft the bill sometimes. The consultation they hold is very limited. They don't consult all the stakeholders, especially the civil society, the media, and the activists. They don't take the feedback very seriously. They will push what the government think is right. They push it into the parliament, and even in the parliament, as we already discussed, there's hardly any debate or discussion or review taking place. They bulldoze the bill by using the brute majority force of the government in power. They get the bills passed into law, and no wonder they will come up for litigation in courts later. So how can you blame the courts for this? Courts are stepping in because the laws are not well drafted, they are not well formulated. They're not even properly discussed or debated. They have serious flaws, lacunas. Sometimes provisions are there which goes against the constitution, against the fundamental rights. Sometimes laws have been passed which are not fair and reasonable. Obviously, courts will litigate. Courts will take up the litigation. They will step into the domain of the parliament. The only way to avoid this is for parliament to do its business. Only way to avoid is for the executive to do its business. It's the job of the executive to draft the correct laws, ensure that it is fine-tuned, rectified in the legislative stage itself in the parliament. Then you bring out the perfect law. This is where the government is not making use of the AGI's office, the Attorney General for India. The Indian Constitution provides for a legal expert to provide that legal advice to the government and the parliament. The Attorney General for India can be brought into the parliament to check the legal fairness and validity of the laws which are being discussed, to render legal opinion, so that the law is fine-tuned in the legislative house itself before it reaches the courts for litigation. So that is what we have to learn from this article, that due diligence is missing from the government and the parliament in drafting and making and passing our laws. No wonder these half-baked laws are now being litigated in courts. So this is again a very serious issue, a matter of concern. Now coming to another major concern, the Hindu today brings out a data point on the criminalization of Indian politics. Nothing much to discuss. It's a very important data that you can take down, which you can use in your mains answers. According to this new study, the share of our legislators who have serious criminal charges against them has more than doubled since 2009, especially in the parliament. The share of MPs in the parliament who have serious criminal charges against them, it has more than doubled in the last 16 odd years. Now, this is very alarming. 31% of our MPs, 31% of MPs in the parliament, 29% of MLAs in the state legislatures, they have serious criminal charges against them. This points towards the criminalization of politics, the entry of criminal elements into politics. So this brings up the need for electoral reforms, the need to decriminalize politics, which is a debatable topic. Of course, I'll not go into the entire topic again, but I just wanted to present this data which you can note down. You can note down that 31% of our MPs are having serious criminal charges against them. 29% of our MLAs across the country have serious criminal charges against them. There's another update from Polity again related to Supreme Court. Supreme Court has asked the government to frame guidelines to regulate the conduct on social media. See, social media is already regulated by the IT rules. The Modi government brought out the IT rules in 2021 under the IT Act. It has been amended, updated as well in 2023. So under the IT rules, social media companies, the intermediaries like Meta, Google, Apple, etc., they are already regulated. There are strict obligations on them under the IT rules. But now the Supreme Court is directing the government to bring out guidelines for conduct on social media for influencers, for content creators. This is in relation to the recent case involving comedians such as Samay Raina and influencers such as Ranveer Allahabadiya. I'm sure all of you are aware of the case. So the Supreme Court, which was hearing this matter, raised a serious concern about the insensitive jokes that were cracked by comedian Samay Raina about disabled people. So this matter has been taken very seriously by the court, that how can someone make jokes at the expense of disabled people? And it has directed the government to frame a code of conduct. Now, this is very controversial again. It's quite alarming. Now, to what extent should the state regulate what happens on social media? This again brings up the question of right to free speech, right to free expression under Article 19. Where do you draw that line? Yes, there are reasonable restrictions under Article 19, correct. But should it go to the extent where you bring out a code of conduct? What if it's very broadly defined, as we have seen with previous laws and regulations? What if it is misinterpreted by the police, by the government? And what if they misuse this to target genuine criticism? So the Supreme Court itself has now directed the government to come out with a code of conduct for content creators and influencers. Yes, there is a need to regulate what happens on social media because we are all aware of the consequences, right? The spread of fake news, misinformation, propaganda. This could have real world consequences. There is a need to ensure that the content on social media is appropriate. It is regulated to some extent, but it should not be too excessive. Excessive regulation on social media will cripple free speech, free expression, and free press. Government itself will misuse those guidelines and provisions to target critics and opponents. So now the Supreme Court has directed the government to come out with guidelines to regulate the content by framing a code of conduct for social media content creators and influencers. So let's see what happens. This is going to be a developing story again. Next, another important development. Israel has been continuing with its genocidal war in Gaza. Recently, the United Nations itself has declared a famine, official famine in Gaza, where Israel has been accused of deliberately blocking the delivery of aid, including food and life-saving medicines. as a result of which innocent civilians are losing their lives. More than 60,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed in the ongoing conflict. Many of them innocents, many of them young children, women, old age people. So, no wonder Israel stands accused of committing a genocide, committing serious war crimes and crimes against humanity. And Israel has not stopped at this. Of late, it has stepped up attacks against those who are delivering aid, against relief camps where civilians would have collected to collect the aid material. And even more disturbing is that we have seen attacks against journalists. Foreign journalists have been targeted, and sometimes it appears it is deliberate by the IDF. There is ample evidence to indicate that Israeli defense forces are probably trying to deliberately target foreign journalists, and 5 journalists have been killed who were reporting for reputed media outlets such as Reuters, Al Jazeera, and Associated Press. Just a few days ago, journalists from Al Jazeera were killed, and this has led to a global outcry. It has raised serious questions about press freedom and the threat faced by journalists in war zones. Because journalists play a critical role, the media plays a very important role. See, first of all, Israel has placed a blockade on Gaza. It has tried to keep international foreign journalists away from Gaza. Israel doesn't want the world to know what's happening. So, when some journalists manage to report from Gaza, there have been some deliberate acts from the IDF where, despite knowing that press is present, they've opened fire at certain locations, which has led to the death of journalists. And this goes against international best practices. No wonder even the closest allies of Israel are abandoning Israel today. France, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom, all the European partners are distancing themselves from Israel. They have issued an ultimatum that if Israel doesn't stop this genocidal war and agree for a ceasefire, they are going to recognize Palestine. Is that clear? So this is one update regarding the Gaza conflict. Next, Prime Minister Modi held a very, very important meeting with the Prime Minister of Fiji. And some important agreements have been signed, which projects India's growing presence in the South Pacific. Fiji is a small island nation located over here. You can see that in the map. It's like a small dot in the South Pacific. This is where your Pacific Island nations are present. Clear? The Pacific Island countries, PICs, they have become a priority for India of late. In fact, India has set up a dedicated forum called the FIPIC, the Forum for India Pacific Island Countries Cooperation, which has been pioneered by the Modi government to drive our foreign policy towards the South Pacific and promote our influence. Now, I'll give you a small homework. Can you read about FIPIC and the group of Pacific Island countries and mention the basic facts in the comments? This is going to help you in your prelims. So read about the forum between India and Pacific Island countries called FIPIC, and read about this organization of South Pacific nations called the Pacific Island countries. There's a grouping, they have their own group. So please read about these two platforms and mention the basic facts in the comments. So take this as an assignment. Now let me tell you quickly why Fiji is important for India. We share a historical cultural link with Fiji because a large percentage of the population of Fiji, they are of Indian origin. They are of Indian descent. Because under British rule, thousands of Indian families were transported here under the brutal indentured labor system of the British. So those Indians who were left behind, their subsequent generations, they form the cultural link, giving us a soft power influence even in such a far away region. Is that clear? The descendants, they were primarily from the laborers who were transported from India. They were primarily from the UP Bihar belt. You find a strong presence of the Bhojpuri community, and you find Indians from southern parts of the country, subcontinent as well. They were the ones who were transported here by the British, dumped on this island, mainly to run the plantations, the sugar plantations and the colonial businesses. So the subsequent generations which have settled over here form that close cultural bond, and India has remained a very influential power in Fiji, gives us influence across South Pacific. Now today, this is a new battleground in geopolitics. Traditionally, Western powers have been very influential over here. Powers like Australia, New Zealand, and of course, United States. The US even has a military base at Guam and exercises significant military, economic, and diplomatic influence with Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. So, Western countries were always dominant in the South Pacific. But now there is a new entrant. There is a new entrant playing a much bigger role, which is China. China has projected its Belt and Road Initiative projects into South Pacific. It has even signed military agreements with Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Tuvalu. China is proposing to build even possible military bases, and the PLA deployments have gone up. The naval deployments of PLA has increased, and it has signed a security agreement with Solomon Islands for this purpose. So now China is in competition because see, the South Pacific is home to a very large exclusive economic zone. The countries here are very small nations, very small island territories, some of them vulnerable to submergence as well. In fact, UPSC asked an environment question based on the submergence of small islands. It's related to islands like Tuvalu, which are facing the risk of submergence and they're relocating as well. By the way, France also is a major player here. There are French territories like New Caledonia, and there is French Polynesia as well, right? There are French colonial territories present even today, which have never been decolonized. So France is also a major player here. So they're all competing for the resources present in the EEZ of South Pacific. The hydrocarbons, the fishing resources, the precious minerals and polymetallic nodules, etc. So there is a clear competition breaking out here, and India is also not far behind. India also wants to compete and leverage our own influence. So we are providing development assistance to these small countries here. So this visit of the PM of Fiji and the meeting with PM Modi in Delhi was very important on this ground. India has donated ambulances. We are building a super specialty hospital. We are aligning in the field of defense and security, taking a very bold stance and bold approach to build defense security relations as well. So yesterday, the two prime ministers have signed an agreement to support the training and the capacity building of the armed forces of Fiji, which means India will be donating military equipment. We will be assisting in the training of the armed forces of Fiji. And India has opened a new defense wing in the Indian High Commission in Suva, which is the capital of Fiji. So India is being very bold in its diplomatic approach, focusing on defense security ties and maritime security. This is a clear response from India towards the growing military presence of China. As China is stepping up its military role in Indo-Pacific, so is India. And this aligns with the vision of our Act East policy and the Mahasagar doctrine. So please make a note. These initiatives with Fiji and other Pacific Island nations, they perfectly align with the vision of Mahasagar doctrine and Act East policy. It aligns with our Indo-Pacific vision, which is to maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific and stabilize the region, which is basically to counter Chinese aggression. Now, coming to the prelim section, just two articles and we will wrap it up after that. There's an update with regard to defense. Indian Navy has inducted two stealth frigates, Udaigiri and Himgiri, which are a follow-up of the Shivalik class of frigates built under Project 17A. Project 17A was one of the most ambitious defense projects. It involved indigenous design of the warship. By the way, this happens to be the 100th indigenous vessel designed by the Warship Design Bureau of Indian Navy. The last 100 warships have been indigenously designed by the Indian Navy itself through its in-house Warship Design Bureau. These warships, Udaigiri, Himgiri, have been built indigenously in India at Mazgaon Dock Limited and GRSE in Kolkata. 75% of the content is indigenous, which is a big boost for Make in India and Atmanirbhar campaign of the Modi government. It's one of the latest advanced stealth warships. It's built with enhanced features to reduce its radar signature and acoustic signature. It has better radar systems and advanced sensors and weapon systems as well. So it is one of the state-of-the-art warships which is being brought in. Under Project A, the Shivalik class was deployed into duty Now, the follow-up frigates, Udaygiri, Himgiri, have been built and inducted as well. So they are powered by a combination of diesel and gas-based propulsion. So note down these basic facts. This highlights the growing blue water capabilities of the Indian Navy. Coming to the last topic, Rohingya refugees who are settled in Bangladesh have marked the 8th anniversary of their uprooting from the Rakhine state of Myanmar. See, in 2016, 2017, in the Rakhine state of Myanmar that you see over here, which faces the Bay of Bengal, the Rohingya Muslim minorities were targeted by Myanmar's army in collusion with a notorious armed ethnic insurgent group called the Arakan Army. The Arakan Army, representing the Arakanese, the native Buddhist population of the Rakhine region, where you have the Arakan Mountains. These Buddhists have always targeted Rohingya Muslim minorities. There is a history of communal tensions between Arakanese Buddhists and Rohingya Muslims who are settled in Rakhine. So, when the Arakan army and the Arakanese Buddhists who were radicalized, when they targeted the Rohingya Muslims with the backing of Myanmar's army, it led to a massive humanitarian crisis. There have been accusations of a genocide against the military regime of Myanmar and these armed rebel insurgent groups of targeting Rohingya Muslims. They were pushed out as refugees into neighboring countries. So neighboring countries like Bangladesh, India, Thailand, Malaysia, they've all received Rohingya refugees. And Bangladesh has been the biggest recipient. Because historically, Rohingyas belong to the Chittagong, Cox's Bazar region. So they had moved and settled in Rakhine and they've never been accepted in Myanmar post-independence. So the refugees primarily moved back into Chittagong, Cox's Bazar region of Bangladesh and they have been settled over here as refugees. So please make a note of the refugee camps. UPSC is known to ask prelims questions based on such regions which are affected by a crisis or where refugee camps are located. So in this article, the Kutupalong refugee camp in Cox's Bazar district of Bangladesh is in the news. You can see here the Kutupalong refugee camps, then Jamtoli, Chakmarkul, Unchiprang, Hakimpara. So just make a note of these important refugee camps in Bangladesh in Chittagong, Cox's Bazar area where Rohingya refugees are settled by Bangladesh. So just a fact for your prelims, a possible map question, a places in news question can be asked. So on this note, I bring my detailed analysis to an end. I hope you guys have liked and enjoyed the session. And if you did, do press the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.